All right, so hopefully this recording will work correctly because we got out of iCloud storage and computer storage. But that's the life of a graphic designer on the laptop. So thanks for joining us. If you are watching live currently, Hunter, Will, Mallory, Evie, and Lucy somewhere in the building, or if you're checking us out later on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, this is April the 15th, tax day. Just kidding, it's not tax day. Whenever that is, I don't know when tax day is going to be now. But if one good thing came out of the coronavirus is that they put off tax day. So good for them. So this is Wednesday night, and we're going to have our Wednesday night Brewer Savage Bible study. And I hope that anybody who can't check it out live can check it out later. And maybe we'll get something out of it. So we've already prayed, so we'll go ahead and get started. I got kind of a long introduction. I know that makes everybody just really excited to listen for the next ever how many minutes. But we are going to eventually get to Matthew chapter 25. But not yet. Matthew 25, and we'll be in verses 14 through 30. So I was thinking this week, and I've been talking to some of the seniors in our church group and just, other people in our youth group and adults in our church and my family and different people. And the thought that came to mind for me was this is very much out of our control. There's things going on right now in the world and in our life that are affecting our life, but it's not our fault. We didn't do anything good to get it, or we didn't do anything bad to earn it. I mean, it just is what it is. We didn't. It's something that's out of our control. And this is my title: Mad at God. Mad at God. And it's kind of a serious subject. And can't think I've ever heard of a Bible study on it. But the Bible's got some things to say about it, and I could spend a series on it just in the book of Job. And I'll reference Job a little bit, but we're not going to do an exhaustive study on Job. What I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to try to attempt to give some perspective on it. I don't know, I just seem to be writing my lessons like they're some sort of persuasive essay, like I used to do back in college and high school, to have to persuade at some point that I've got this thesis and I have to back it up and show you what I think. So I may be completely wrong about this, but you can check it and take your Bible and study it and see. But this is how it's helped me in times in my life that I've been mad at God. Now, that's things that we don't talk about very often. We're not supposed to be mad at God, and we're not supposed to say that we're mad at God. And sometimes we feel like it's something we shouldn't say out loud, or it's hush hush, or we may have that feeling down deep in our heart. Something went wrong in our life, and it's out of our control, and there's nobody to point the finger at. And it's very hard for us to wrap our minds around that something could go a certain way, completely out of our control. That seems unfair to us. This coronavirus is the greatest example there'll ever be. We'll be talking about this for years, but I mean, there's just a lot of things going wrong right now in the world based on something that we personally can't control. Now, we can do our best to social distance and quarantine and ramp up medical supplies and look for vaccines and do this and that, and we're doing the best we can to contain or to prevent or to alleviate this problem. But the point is we can't do very much about it. We're kind of at the mercy of things beyond our control. So I'm gonna give you a couple examples of things I thought about when I was really talking to our seniors. I mean, I've been pouting about how this corona's affected my life, and I don't even know anybody sick, and nobody in my family's sick. So I mean, it's not affecting me nearly to the extent that it could. So I was just being kind of spoiled and whiny. But I'm not a senior either. I mean, 2020 is just a year to me. 2021 is going to be the same to me, as far as I'm going to go to work and teach school and coach football if the Lord wills. But for some people, 2020 is a big year for them. It's their senior year, or it could be a year that they were planning on getting some kind of scholarship, or it could be a year that they're planning on getting some sort of training or getting into some kind of college program, or it could be a year that, a make or break year for them in their life in some kind of way. And it feels like they're being cheated out of it. This is some examples I thought about. My senior year at Morville, we wasn't good at football, but we had a chance to make the playoffs. At least we thought we did. That was our goal. And I worked towards that goal personally. I mean, our whole team did, but I personally worked. That seems like a very small potatoes thing that, I wanted to go to the playoffs in football. It's just a game. It's just a sport that, I don't even know who won the state championship that year in our division or in our classification. So it tells you it doesn't make that huge of a hill of beans. But to me, as an 18-year-old senior, it was the world. And to be honest, I worked harder for that goal than I worked for my college degree or my high school diploma. I mean, it was something that I put a lot of pain and strain into my life to achieve. And I'm not going to get into the whole details of it, but it was things beyond my personal control. I felt like I did all I could, and it wasn't enough. And there were a lot of factors outside of my control that ruined that dream for me. I had all my eggs in that basket. And I remember feeling cheated, and I remember feeling mad at God because everybody who's a Christian in high school that plays sports, they pray that God will help them win. I know that's not the right way you're supposed to pray, and I've learned and grown a lot, but that's how we prayed. You know, the Lord help us win, help us not be injured. But we wanted to be on the winning side. It didn't turn out that way. And as an immature Christian, I blame God for things not going my way. And I'm not the only person. Maybe I am. Maybe this is a lesson to just your boy Jeremy, and I'm the only person ever that's felt this way. But I'm gonna keep going down some other examples, and maybe one of them will hit home with you. I thought about these seniors, and baseball season is really what stuck in my mind, and softball season, because that's the spring sport that's really most prevalent for boys and girls around here that's getting left out. I know there's tennis and there's track and field, and there's all kind of different things and other activities. But your senior seasons has a lot to do with you getting a scholarship or not. And for those who were on the borderline of getting exposure, they've been robbed of this opportunity, and it's not their fault. They didn't get injured. They didn't, get kicked off the team. They didn't not go out for their senior year and just became, worthless or lazy. It's something that happened that they can't control, that their coach can't control. Nobody got mad at them. It's just something out of their control. Or it can be even things that's like experiences like prom or graduation ceremonies on time. There's lots of things. Like I got to speak at my high school graduation, and there's seniors who will not. And it's not their fault. It's not because they didn't make the grade or because they have some sort of penalty that they're paying. It's just something that's out of their control. And I find that sometimes when we always want to blame people when things go wrong. Sometimes you blame yourself. If you're honest, some things go wrong in your life and it's your fault. But sometimes it's just those things that seem to not be going right. And there's just no finger. You spin the wheel of blame and it doesn't land on anybody. And you just think to yourself, this is the universe at work, or this is nature is working against me, or it's God. God is to blame. So what do you do when you're dealt with it? I thought about cancer or even this sickness. There's a lot of people whose lives have been completely wrecked and changed because of some disease that they didn't ask for, something that they didn't do to cause, something that's completely out of their hands. So what do we do in life when we feel like we got the raw end of the deal and the person that seems to be doing the dealing is God? How does a Christian respond to being truly in their heart mad at God? Let's see what I wrote down here. There's been times in my life that I've been trying to do God's will. I thought I had plans that I thought were God's will for my life, and they've blown up in my face. And I mean, when you're trying to serve the Lord and do God's will and things fall apart, it really makes you want to know. I mean, I've taken care of the Jeremy side of it. I have done what I was trying to do. Whose fault is it? Why did this not work out? God, I was trying my best and it didn't work for me. Why? But this is the perspective I think we have to shift. We've talked in the past several weeks and even months in the youth group, if you've been able to be here in person before we went live and in person on the internet. But we've talked about things like our value in God and how our self-worth is not in our last name and our looks or our abilities. It's in our value in Christ, that we are saved sinners, that we're children of the King. The children of the King are not special because they're children. They're special because of the King. They're children of the King. And that's where our real value comes from in life. And we've also talked about lordship, and we don't use that term Lord anymore. But I've been reading these old books about the old knights in shining armor back in the day, the lords and the ladies in medieval times. And we sometimes miss out on the meaning of the word Lord, but for them, Lord meant somebody that you swore your life and allegiance to. You swore your sword to them. You swore your farm to them. You swore your income and taxes to them because you needed somebody to be your Lord. You need somebody to protect. You need somebody to provide. And that's what God does for us. He protects for us and provides for us, and he leads us and he guides us and he plans for us. But our end of that deal is that he is our Lord. He is our boss. We are his oath men and women. We give our promise of our life. We give our life to him. So when we say we give our life to him, that means something. So I'm going to try to explain some of the, at least the way my brain worked out with this. Let me give you a couple examples in the Bible. Take Job, for instance. Job was a follower of the Lord. He was an oath man. God was his overlord, his boss, his master. And Job didn't ask to be used as a great example for how much you can make a follower of God suffer without them blaspheming God. He didn't ask to be stripped of all his earthly possessions and his family except for his wife. He didn't ask to have his wife turn on him and start questioning God herself. He didn't ask for any of that stuff. God just chose him. So a lot of the book of Job is Job struggling with this issue of he's got things going badly in his life and he doesn't know why. And he's searching his soul and searching his life and searching his history. And his friends are bombarding him. They're all trying to get to the bottom of why is Job going through this? And at the end of the story, he can't come up with a reason. And he begins to question God. He wants to know why God. And I don't know if Job was mad at God. I know I would have been. But he does question God. And God's answer to him basically is, who are you to question me? Where are you at when I hung the stars in place and created the earth and created you and created the animals? How do you know anything to question me? And that may seem like a harsh answer. But I think the problem is when I have been mad at God, it's been my problem with my perspective of who I am and who he is. So let's give us some other examples. Today, I got that old dry, scratchy voice because of these allergies. So I hope my bottle of water lasts through the duration. I was listening today to something I wasn't even trying to get a thought for this lesson. I was just listening to some political stuff. And Franklin Graham was being interviewed. Of course, that's Billy Graham's son. And he runs the Samaritan's Purse that we give the Christmas box to, the Operation Christmas Child. And that's just part of their organization. But they do a lot of ministry and on the ground disaster relief and things like that. But anyway, they were talking about this coronavirus. But this is a quote that he said today. So I'm going to read it. He said, I don't fear what's before me. I don't fear death. If God wants my life to end today, so be it. My life is in his hands. I gave it to him. He can take me, spend me, use me however he wants. I think that if we can ever get our perspective to be like that, okay, when you're mad at God, what you're really saying is, God, this has happened to me. This is not going my way. My plans were changed. My health was changed. I planned to live till I was 70, and now I've got this disease. Or I planned to raise my kids in the Lord, and you took my child from me. Or I planned to have my business grow, but you caused a depression. Or I planned to go to the beach, but now we're socially distancing. Or I planned to go to college, but you took my scholarship chance away. It's always you did to me, my plans, my way, my possessions, my thoughts, even my friends. It's all about us. And what has really helped me, I guess, is not that God changed, it's that God changed my perspective. And I'm going to try to give you some examples of that. But if we could ever get like Franklin Graham and say, look, this is the term he used, and I don't know, I may have misunderstood him because I don't hear good. He may have said some other word, but what it sounded like to me was he said, God can take me, he can spend me, like spend a dollar bill. If I got $10 in my pocket, $10 bills, and I want to use that $10 or one of those dollars to buy a Reese's at the checkout stand, or I want to put it in the corn machine outside and get a toy for Lucy, or if I want to spend it on supper, or it doesn't matter to what's that dollar got to say about how I spend it. It's my dollar. I can spend it how I choose to. And if we give ourselves to the Lord, we're not ours anymore. We give the rights of our life away. Who are we to say how he uses that? Now, I'm going to give you some examples of that and try to make it biblical because I'm trying not to make this up. So I know that's a long introduction, but the short story is it's not about us. And the times I've been mad at God is because I felt wrong, because my life wasn't going my way and it was about me. Paul, or the writer of Hebrews, maybe Paul, maybe not, he said in Hebrews 12, run the race with patience, run the race that is set before us. We all got a race to run, but the key thing is he said, run the race that is set before you. You can't run anybody else's race than the one you run. You can only play with there's probably 100 songs written about, you got to play with the cards that you were dealt. You got to live with the hand that you were dealt. You didn't deal your circumstances in your life to you. Now, you may have in some ways. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go wrong in our life that are a direct result of our own stupidity or our own rebellion. But a lot of things in life are not. A lot of things just are what they are because of things beyond our control. So I'm going to read you a biblical example of that. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 25. Now I'm going to read this whole story. It's not that long. Are y'all bored yet? We good?
Wait a second. Let me go get a Bible.
All right. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 25.
Give me one too, bro. Wait a second. Wait a second, big dog.
All right. We got nothing but time. Hope I'm recording this right.
Matthew 25.
Matthew 25. Now, before I get started in this, while y'all are looking for your place, I'm going to explain something. In the old King James Bible and in several other English translations, maybe all of them, I don't know, but the one I'm using tonight, the ESV, and I know at least in the King James, there's a word using here called talent. This is the parable of the talents. Now, we think of talent as like I'm really good at playing the piano, or I can hit a baseball, or I can draw. That's my talent. And that's obviously what the talent is. But in this day, what it was talking about, talent was a weight of measurement. Like, for instance, you could have a talent of gold, or you could have a talent of silver. It was a certain weight of that particular substance. And obviously, the talent of gold was more valuable than the talent of silver, but it was a weight. It was a measurement. It was something to talk about this. So when it says that he gave these people different talents, it didn't mean that some of them could play the drums and some of them could sing and some of them couldn't. It was talking about he gave them a different amount of money. So let's just read through here. Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. All right, this is him talking. He's giving a long speech about the kingdom of heaven, what the kingdom of heaven is like. And what he says is, for it, the kingdom of heaven, will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them to his property. So to one he gave 5 talents of money, probably silver. To another, 2, and to another 1. So 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent of money, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of the servants came and settled accounts with him. Verse 20 says, and he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter the joy of your master. He also, who had received 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you had not sown and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid the talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. So basically, he gave him his 1 talent back. Instead of using it and investing it, working hard and making it grow, he just took it and put it in the ground. And he didn't lose it, but he didn't use it. So his master, verse 26, but his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. And at my coming, I should have received what was my own with interest. So he's saying if you just put it in the bank, at least I would have got a little interest off it. It would have been 1 talent plus a little bit. It would at least it'd been better off than being in the mud, in the dirt. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and to he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away, and cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, into the place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, that's kind of a long passage to read. Let's break it down. Summarize. Rich master, he's leaving to go for a while. So he gives 3 servants 3 amounts of money, and he tells them to take care of it until he comes back. He gives one 5 talents. He goes and invests and works and profits and turns that into 5 more talents. So he's got 10. He gives another one 2 talents, and he goes and works and labors and deals and wheels and deals and makes 2 talents into 4. So he doubled it. And he gives one talent. Not talent as in skill, talent is like money. And he buries it in the ground, and it turns out to be the same 1 talent he had. And that's the story. So this is the thing that I noticed about this story. The master gave 3 different amounts, and he got 3 different results, but he only had 2 responses. 2. Can you see me on the screen? 2. I'm trying to do my examples here, and I'm just guessing the bottom. 2. Okay, so if he gave 3 different amounts to 3 different people with 3 different results, why is there only 2 responses? And I'm more interested in the first 2 people than I am the last one. This is a great lesson about being wasteful of what the Lord gives you, but that's not really the point I want to make out of it. The master wasn't so much concerned that one servant went from 5 to 10 and the one went from 2 to 4. He wasn't mad at the servant who had 4 because he didn't have 10. He gave the same response and reward to both. He told both of those guys, well done, enjoy the good things of your master. He said, well done, good and faithful servant, and you've been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. So how does that apply to us in our life? This is something I noticed. The servants didn't get to choose how much he gave them. Okay, so he gave 1 5 and 1 2 and 1 1. And I can't find anywhere where any 3 of these servants said, all right, I'll be the one with 5. And, well, if he's going to have 5, I'll take the 2. Well, I'll take the 1. It didn't seem like there was a conversation about who got what. They were assigned because the master's the master. He's the boss. He's the Lord. He does what he feels like doing. He gathers where he didn't sow, and he reaps where he didn't scatter. And he's the boss, and he made this choice. And that's God in our life. You don't get to pick the road that you travel down. What he is concerned with is what you do with the life that you've been given. So if you are a senior and you don't get your fair chance to walk across the stage, and it's not your fault, that's just the road that God gave you to live, because this life is not about getting the same results that your mom had, or getting the same results that your older sibling had last year, or getting the same results of the 2019 class or the 2021 class, or if you get cancer and you pass away at the age of 35. That's tough. And I'm not trying to belittle these things or say that I've got this mastered. But my point is, if God is in charge and he is the boss, you get what he gives you. And he doesn't judge you as much on the results of what you are given as much as he judges you on what you did with what you had. He's not mad at the guy who got 4 talents out of 2 because he didn't get 10 talents. He didn't give the guy with 2 talents as many talents as he gave the guy with 5. So he didn't expect him to get the same results. What he expected was that he got a fair profit on the abilities and the responsibilities and whatever it was that God gave him. How can I prove that? Well, one of the ways I can prove this is his response to the guy who didn't do anything. He didn't tell the guy who had 1 talent and kept his 1 talent, why didn't you get 4? Why didn't you get 10? He wasn't mad at him for his failure to accomplish anything. He was mad at him for his failure to attempt, for his effort, for his challenge. Let me give you another example. We got this exercise bike, and you can look at me and tell that I ride, 150 miles a day probably, and I'm skinny as a rail, and I'm just obviously a hardcore biker guy that's just fit. That's probably not true, but I have rode every day this week, so hashtag 3 days in a row streak of exercise. There's an interesting feature on our bike that tells you all kind of measurements. It tells you calories burned, distance, speed, resistance. And that's the interesting one to me, is resistance. There's this little knob on our bike that you can make that thing spin easy or you make it spin hard. So if I put that on, it goes, I don't know if it goes to 100. I ain't never made it to 100, but let's just say it goes from 0 or from 1 to 100 on resistance. I've made it up to like 75. If I put that resistance on about 10, I can probably stand beside that bike and spin that pedal, and it'll probably spin for 5 minutes because it's so easy resistance. And if I ride for 30 minutes on level 10, I might can ride 20 miles or more, and it'll be easy breezy, and I might even be breaking a sweat because it's just not very much resistance. But if I crank that thing up to about 70 or 75, I'm not going to make it very far because it's like riding uphill. I guess for people who are not spoiled millennials that bike indoors, if you're the comparison will be riding the bike downhill versus riding the bike uphill. If you spend 20 minutes riding the bike downhill, you're going to get a lot further down the road than if you spend 20 minutes riding the bike uphill. But that's not the point. There's this other setting on our bike that has output. And the output is in kilojoules, I think. I just really wanted to say the word kilojoules on this recording because that sounds like a really smart science word. So your output is how much energy you expend. So if my ambition is to put work into this device to lose weight or to burn calories, then I'm not so much concerned about the distance as much as I'm concerned about the output, how much work I put into it. So if I crank that thing up to 75, I might only go 5 miles in my 30-minute workout. But those 5 miles, I did more work than the next man who may have been going on his downhill on 10 and made it 20 miles. What does that got to do with what I'm saying? My point is, you don't get to pick the road. In your life, you don't get to pick the course that is set before you. You do. I mean, you obviously choose your career and your spouse and your way to an extent. But if you're really trying to serve the Lord, if you want to have a successful journey in this life, you're going to have to find the path that He has set before you, the path that He has set before you. And if you're on the road that God has you on, it's not your concern how high the hills are or how fast the slopes are. Your job is to pedal your bike on your race the best you can. Your job is not to finish the race with 10 talents. Your job is to take what He gave you and make the best of it. So if my senior football season, my job wasn't to make the playoffs. My job was to take the abilities that I had and the time I had to work and do the best that I could. And I wish the results had been different. But as far as what I owed my coach and my teammates, what I owed them was my best. And if I gave them my best and it didn't turn out, I can be mad about that if I want to. But the truth about it is, I did what I was supposed to do. And in this life, if I'm a privileged Christian in that I was raised in a Christian home and I was raised with Christian values, and I knew how to live like a Christian before I became a Christian. I knew how to go to church before I even knew that people didn't go to church. I was raised correctly. I knew right from wrong. A lot of people are not raised that way. So in that way, I have an advantage that I have a head start that maybe others don't have. But if I make it further down this road in life and die, then the next person who is on this road and they're struggling, they're sweating, and every day they seem like they're pedaling uphill. God, at the end of the day, I don't think is going to measure on how many miles I made it versus how many miles they made it, because He chose the path. If it's something that is out of your control, then it must be in His control. And if He set things in control, He's in charge of it. Your job is to do the work where you are. The old movie Facing the Giants is quotable. It's got all kinds of quotes, but one of my favorite quotes from that movie is, "Bloom where you're planted." We planted some tomato plants in a box, an elevated box off the ground. It ain't them tomatoes' fault they're not in the ground. They're planted where they're planted. They didn't choose to be planted there, and they can't get up and move. Their job is to bloom in that spot. And if they don't bloom because it was a bad spot, that's not their fault. That's the fault of the planter. The great news about this is we have the most great planter ever. God has never misplanted anything. He's never plotted a bad course. So now, if the course is right for us, it may not be right for your neighbor. It may not be right for your brother. It may not be right for your spouse. It may not be right for the class of 2022. But if your life is plotted by God, it is the best life for you. And if things don't go the way you planned, that's because you're holding on to what you planned more than what God planned. I promise you, Job's plan wasn't to lose his 10 children to death. It wasn't to lose all his possessions. He didn't get to choose that. His job was to be faithful. I'll give you a couple more examples, and then I'm going to wrap this thing up. And one of them, two of them are from the Bible, and they're really good. One of them's really stupid. I came up with about pancakes. So, You win some, you lose some of these examples. Jeremiah in the Bible, my namesake. He's named after me, in case you're wondering. Jeremiah the prophet. He preached all his life. He was very faithful. From a young age, God called him. And to our knowledge, studying the history of Israel and studying the book of Jeremiah, there's like 0 people ever who converted or turned to God based on his preaching. He preached his whole life with 0 measurable success. He didn't have anything to send into the Baptist record. He didn't have anybody to brag about. He didn't get any baptisms on the chart. He didn't get published in the newspaper for the Gazette to see old Church of Jeremiah is booming. His job was to do what God told him to do, and he saw no earthly results. Jonah, on the other hand, was one of the biggest knuckleheads God ever chose to do anything. Jonah didn't want to serve the Lord. Jonah ran from the Lord. He had to get swallowed by a great fish and transported to the place where he was supposed to go, or he probably wouldn't even went. He learned a hard lesson. And to my knowledge, Jonah ended up preaching for about 3 or 4 days total. And then when he got done doing what God had him to do, he went on the other side of the city he preached to and pouted about it and said, "Woe is me." And he hid under a tree or a shade vine. And then his vine died and he got all hot in the sun and got mad at God for that too. He stayed mad at God. What was his results? Hundreds of thousands of people got saved. I don't know the exact number. I didn't look it up today, but in the book of Jonah, it tells you how many thousands of people in Nineveh got saved. And to my knowledge, it's the greatest revival in the history of the world was Jonah's revival to Nineveh. And it was a very weak effort on his part, in my opinion, but God chose to give him great results. So my question is, who was God more proud of, Jeremiah or Jonah? I don't know, but in our eyes, Jonah was much more successful. But God didn't ask Jonah, did he want to live Jeremiah's life or did he want to live Jonah's life? And Jeremiah didn't get asked either. Jeremiah didn't say, I want 2 talents and you give him 5. They just took what they had and used what God gave them. And the results are what the results are. We own a small business, and I hate to use this example because I'm not trying to jinx myself. Obviously, there's no jinx. God's in control. But I hate to even say this, but if this economy turns horrible, if we go into the second Great Depression, there's a lot of work that Mallory especially, me a little bit, but Mallory especially has sunk her life into. At least the past 6 or 7 years of our life, we've sunk into this business. And if it sinks, the unique thing about this is the coronavirus is going to take a lot of folks' business. It's not just us that's having trouble. It's going to be the whole world economy that's having trouble. But I would sit back and look and say, God, why? Why something that we didn't do? It wasn't we were stupid or we made a bad investment. We did all we could do, and this has been taken from us. Or you had a horrible wreck, or you had, again, that bad diagnosis that the doctor came out with, but you didn't choose it. If you do what God allows you to do based on what he gave you, that he's going to say, well done, come and enjoy the good things of your master. I'll make you ruler over many things because of your faithfulness in the small. It is your job to do the best you can with what he gives you. And if you have this perspective that it doesn't matter where I end up, it matters the journey. Paul said, or they say again, run the race that is set before you. Put one foot in front of the other. It's a marathon, not a sprint, the old cliche. That's all we can control. So my challenge to the seniors, and I keep saying that, it's not like they're the only people listening, they may be. I know that this is horrible, what's happening to you, as far as we consider what's missing, what you're missing out on. And I know it's way worse for people who may have, this horrible disease and different things, but I'm talking to our youth group. So far, thankfully, the Lord has not allowed anybody in our youth group to come down with this illness. It's not fair what's happening to you, but it's not about fair. There's nothing in the Bible that ever promises us, much less guarantees us, a fair life. This is just, I truly realize it's a game to play. This is the course. This is the game that God puts you in. And your end results is not what matters. What matters is how you play it, how you live your life. Franklin Graham said, if he spends me, or if he doesn't spend me, I'm his to spend. All right, let me give you my last dumb example, and maybe this will help. Pancakes. So I love to cook pancakes. I was not famous, but in college, my 4 roommates, they knew that I was a pancake cooker. I would cook pancakes and we'd eat them because I don't have the patience to let something cook in the oven. I like to see it cook on top of the stove. So I like pancakes because A, they taste really good, and B, you can sit there and watch them cook. But let me tell you something about pancake batter. It sticks to everything. The worst thing in the world is to drop the spoon in the pancake batter when you're trying to mix it and have to dig that thing out of there because it's going to go on you, it's going to go on the bowl, it's going to go on your fingers, and you have to wash your hands in the middle of your cooking just to get back to what you were doing. Pancake batter is really sticky. Now, obviously, this applies to burgers too. I might use a burger example. I was grilling the other day. But when you put that pancake batter into the pan, even if it's a non-stick pan, as soon as you put that pancake batter in, if you put it in the wrong spot, like you meant to put it on the corner and you put it dead in the middle, and you ain't got no room to put your next pancake in it because you did it wrong. If you put that pancake in the wrong spot in that pan, too bad, because you can't just slide over and move it. It's not like you're cooking a sausage link or something that you can just move around. When you put that pancake batter in a spot, it is there. You can't move it. But if you give it a minute, it'll begin to crust. The bottom of that pancake will get hard and it'll form a barrier between the pancake batter that's still wet above it and the pan that's hot below it. So the longer you let that pancake sit on that heat, it will eventually release, and then it can become mobile, flexible, we might say, in our life. And in our life, we have to be that way. Sometimes we have to be put to the heat for a while before we can learn to let go. We get attached to things. We get attached to plans. We get attached to possessions, cars, trucks, our best deer rifle or our best hunting plot or our best ball bat, or we get attached to people, the boyfriend or girlfriend we thought we was going to spend the rest of our life with. And if we remain attached to those things more than we're willing to be moved by God, if we try to move around while we're still holding on tight, it's going to make a huge mess. And little crumbles are going to get everywhere, and this little thin part over here is going to burn, and your pancake's going to be all screwed up, and you're not going to be able to flip it over. But I found the times in my life that I have learned to be flexible is not because I had some great revelation from the Lord, and Jeremy Haynes has conquered life, and now I'm flexible. My flexibility and my mobility in life to be able to take from this spot and God moving to this spot is because I've been put to the heat sometimes. And the more times God has taken me and put me to the heat, the more I have learned to release things in this life that are holding me back. And heaven forbid something happened to our families or our friends that we love. But every last thing in our life, if we truly want to sell out to the Lord, they have to be second to his plan for us. And if we can ever put God's plan number one in our life, if our plan changes, even if we thought it was God's plan, as long as I know that I'm running the race he set before me, as long as I'm spending the talents that he gave me, he's keeping the score. It's not my job to keep score. It's not my job to compare to your score. It's not my job to get my value from how much better of a Christian I am than the next Sunday school teacher down the hall. The more I hold on to those things, the more my life rips when things change. But the more I can be applied in where God wants me to be, the more I can learn to release those things. I mean, then you can do the best thing ever and take the pancake and scrape it off that pan and put it on your plate and then put some syrup on it. If that pancake never lets go of the pan, if the heat's never applied to it, then it can never be any use. It can never get any value. It can never give any nourishment. And it can never make you fat to make you have to ride the bike and get another good example from this. So I guess that's my lesson for tonight. I would say if you're mad at God, your biggest thing you have to do is change your perspective. And I'm not sitting here saying that I'll never get mad at God again because I'm stupid and I'm a human and I'm sinful and I struggle. And I still have this supreme sense of right and wrong and fair and unfair, and I don't want anybody to jip me. And sometimes in life you feel that way. You feel like you're getting a raw deal. But as I try to grow as a Christian, I learned that he's got this thing in control. And maybe I've got more obstacles than you do, and that's not fair to the outside. But God's got that in his plan. He knows when the final score comes in, the obstacles that I had and the obstacles that you had. He knows if 0 people will repent from my lesson, and he knows if 100,000s will. And he knows those things. My job is to be faithful in what he's told me to do. And that's your job. Now, again, this is real good teaching and preaching, but it's hard to live. And don't take this lesson and listen to it and then look at me in 6 months and be like, well, that cat ain't doing none of the stuff he said. It's the truth. I'm telling you the truth today, April the 15th. You pray for me and I'll pray for you that we'll be able to live this truth, but it is the truth. And the easiest way to, it's not going to be easy, but the best way, the truest way to get over whatever is going wrong in your situation is to change your perspective on your situation. It's not about your situation. It's not your results. You work for the master, and the master dishes out the money. He dishes out the talent. If you're not a child of the king and you're going through this struggle without a Lord, without a master, and it is just you and your life and your way and your plans, I apologize for how much this is going to make you struggle because your plans are going to be thrown out of whack. Life is going to bombard you today, tomorrow, next year, in 10 years. It's going to bombard you forever. And it's going to bombard me too. But I'm in the master's hands. And I encourage you to give your life to Christ, to make him your Lord, to say, I can't even hold this life I've got anyway, so I may as well give it to him and follow him, because you're not going to be able to win this game either. The only person who can win the game is the one who won the game, the one who's in control of everything. And the only way for you to win is to be on his team, be on his side. And those are lessons you've already had. Check out my YouTube channel, subscribe. So that's it. Give your life to Christ. And once you give your life to Christ, bloom where you're planted. Use the talents you've got. Don't hoard them. Don't waste them. But most of all, don't complain that they're not the talents that somebody else got. Don't complain that your situation is not what you wanted it to be, because it's not about you. It's not about your situation. Comments from the crowd. I see we lost the toddler and the mother.
And Meredith. They all
and
three
Meredith,
followed it.
and the dog.
Oh, she's back.
Whoa, return.
Comes one of them.
This Meredith.
Where's Evie? There she is. A mother and her ducklings.
I'll send help.
And help. We're going to send help soon.
You're finished.
Yeah.
We're about finished. We hadn't prayed yet. We're going to cut this thing off and pray. So this will be on Facebook and YouTube as fast as I can get it uploaded. And we'll cut this off and we'll pray.